Imagine holding a penny in your hand that looks ordinary at first glance, but then someone tells you something strange. It has no mint mark, and that might actually mean something important. Now you start wondering, is this a rare mistake? Or is there a hidden story the government never really talks about? That is exactly the mystery behind the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, and the truth is more interesting than most people expect. The 1967 Lincoln penny is a regular 1-cent coin from the United States, part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series that started in 1909. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies. It has Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, and on the back, the familiar Lincoln Memorial design. But what makes collectors pause is not what you can easily see, but what is missing. There is no mint mark below the date, and for many people who find coins in change or old jars, that missing letter feels like an error worth investigating. To understand this coin properly, we need to go back to what was happening in the United States in the mid-1960s. During this time, the U.S. Mint was dealing with a major coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, silver prices were rising, and circulation demand was extremely high. Because of this pressure, the Mint made several temporary changes to keep coins flowing in everyday commerce. One of those changes involved removing mint marks entirely from most U.S. coins. From 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint intentionally stopped using mint marks on circulating coins. That means coins from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all looked the same on purpose. The idea was simple. The government wanted to reduce coin collecting speculation. At the time, some collectors were pulling new coins out of circulation just to collect different mint marks. Officials believed removing mint marks would discourage this behavior and keep more coins in everyday use. So when you see a 1967 penny with no mint mark, it is not an error. It is actually completely normal. Every single Lincoln cent produced in 1967 was made without a mint mark. That is the first surprising truth that many people do not know, and it instantly changes how you should view this coin. Now let's look at what the 1967 penny is physically made of. This coin is part of the pre-1982 Lincoln Cent series, meaning it is primarily composed of 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made up of zinc and tin. This gives the coin its classic reddish-brown appearance when uncirculated. Over time, exposure to air and handling turns many of them darker or more brownish, but the copper core is still there. This is very different from modern pennies, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. The design itself is the classic Lincoln Cent style that Americans recognize instantly. On the front is Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head, while "Liberty" sits to the left, and the year 1967 is on the right. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial is shown in detailed engraving, with the words "United States of America" and 1 cent clearly visible. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. Because the coin was mass-produced for circulation, the 1967 penny is not rare in the traditional sense. In fact, billions were minted, making it one of the most common coins still found in pocket change today. However, that does not mean it has no value. Its worth depends heavily on condition, and whether it has any unusual minting errors or special characteristics. In normal circulated condition, a 1967 penny is usually worth exactly 1 cent. Even uncirculated examples, which look almost brand new, might only be worth a few dollars at most. But here is where things get interesting. Certain rare errors and high-grade specimens can push the value much higher. For example, coins with strong double die features, off-center strikes, or unusual planchet issues can sometimes sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how dramatic the error is. Some certified uncirculated 1967 pennies graded at very high mint state levels have sold in the range of $10 to $20, sometimes slightly more if the coin has exceptional eye appeal. Error coins are more unpredictable. A clearly visible minting mistake, especially one that is dramatic and verified by grading companies, can attract strong interest from collectors who specialize in Lincoln Cent varieties. One important thing to understand is that the absence of a mint mark alone does not increase the value of this coin. This is where many beginners get confused. Because 1967 pennies were all made without mint marks, That feature is normal and expected. The real value comes from condition and rarity of errors, not from the missing letter. If you want to identify a genuine 1967 penny and avoid common misunderstandings, there are a few simple things to look for. First, check the date. It must clearly read 1967. Next, look just below the date area. There should be no mint mark, and importantly, the surface should not show signs of damage or alteration. Some counterfeit or altered coins try to remove mint marks from other years, but those often leave scratches or uneven surfaces under magnification. Another key detail is the metal color and weight. A genuine 1967 penny should feel consistent with other copper cents of its era. If it feels unusually light or has a strange silver or gray tone, it could be plated or altered. While weighing coins precisely requires a scale, even a simple comparison with other pennies can sometimes reveal obvious differences. Collectors also pay attention to the edges of the coin. Authentic 1967 cents should show a solid copper edge, not a layered or steel-like appearance. If you see plating peeling or unnatural coloring, it is usually a sign the coin has been modified. There are also a few interesting facts about this coin that make it more fun to study. For example, the no mint mark period from 1965 to 1967 is one of the only times in modern U.S. history when circulating coins completely lacked mint identifiers. That 3-year window stands out as a unique experiment in American coin production. Another surprising detail is that while the mint removed mint marks to reduce collecting, it actually had the opposite long-term effect. Today, collectors actively seek coins from this era because they represent a special moment in U.S. minting history. What was once a decision to discourage collecting has become a reason for historical interest. Many collectors also enjoy 1967 pennies because they are easy to find but still offer opportunities for discovery. Searching through rolls or old collections can sometimes reveal coins with minor errors or unusually high grades. That sense of possibility keeps people engaged, even though most coins are common. In the broader world of coin collecting, the 1967 Lincoln penny represents something important. It shows that not every valuable coin is rare in the traditional sense. Sometimes value comes from history, condition, and small details that most people overlook. It also teaches new collectors that understanding context is just as important as finding something unusual. Today, the 1967 no mint mark penny remains a steady presence in the hobby. It is often one of the first coins young collectors study because it is easy to find and helps explain how mint marks work. It is also a reminder that not every missing feature is a mistake, and sometimes what looks like an error is actually part of a larger story. As you hold a penny like this in your hand, you are not just looking at a small piece of copper. You are holding a snapshot of a moment in American history when the country's coin system was under pressure, and decisions were made that still affect collectors decades later. And even though most of these coins are worth only a cent, the story behind them is far more valuable than their face value. So the next time you come across a 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, take a closer look. You might not be holding a rare fortune, but you are definitely holding a piece of history that continues to surprise people even today. In 1978, millions of pennies were released into everyday life across the United States. But hidden among them is a small detail that still confuses collectors today. A Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks ordinary, almost too ordinary. Yet it raises a surprising question. Why does it have no mint mark at all? And could something so common actually be worth more than 1 cent? The answer is more interesting than most people expect, and it starts with a simple coin that passed through the hands of millions of Americans without anyone noticing its future value. The coin we are talking about is the 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. It belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series that has been in circulation since 1909. The no mint mark version from 1978 was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at that time did not use a mint mark on its regular pennies. That small detail is the key reason this coin exists, and also the reason so many people misunderstand it today. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the late 1970s in the United States. The country was going through economic change. Inflation was rising, and the value of the penny was slowly shrinking in real terms. Even so, the penny remained an essential part of daily transactions. Everything from candy bars to bus fares still depended on small change, and the United States Mint was producing billions of coins every year to keep up with demand. In 1978, the Lincoln Cent continued a design tradition that had already lasted nearly 7 decades. On the front or obverse side is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. This design was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. It was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a circulating U.S. coin, which made it a groundbreaking moment in American coin design. On the back, the penny in 1978 still carried the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been introduced in 1959. That design shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Abraham Lincoln inside the memorial itself. This detail is so small that many people miss it completely, especially on heavily circulated coins. Now, what makes the 1978 no-mint mark penny interesting is not a special design or a secret variation. Instead, it is the absence of something. There is no mint mark under the date. For collectors today, that small blank space raises curiosity. But in reality, for Philadelphia coins of this era, that was completely normal. The Philadelphia Mint did not consistently use a P mint mark on pennies until much later. So when you see a 1978 penny without a mint mark, it simply means it was made in Philadelphia as part of regular production. The composition of the 1978 Lincoln penny is also important. By this time, the penny was no longer made of pure copper. Since 1982, pennies have been mostly zinc with a thin copper coating, but in 1978, the coin was still made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That gives it a slightly heavier feel and a more solid copper appearance compared to modern pennies. This older copper composition is one reason some collectors still enjoy handling coins from this era. When it comes to rarity, the truth is surprising to many beginners. The 1978 no-mint mark penny is not rare in circulated condition. In fact, it is extremely common. Millions were produced, and many still exist today in jars, piggy banks, and old collections. In normal worn condition, it is usually worth only face value 1 cent. Even uncirculated examples, while nicer to look at, typically sell for just a small premium, often ranging from a few cents to a couple of dollars depending on quality. However, the story changes when we talk about special varieties and errors. This is where collector interest becomes more serious. Some 1978 pennies can show minting mistakes such as off-center strikes, double die features, or unusual planchet problems. A double die occurs when the design is accidentally impressed twice during the minting process, causing a slight doubling in letters or numbers. These errors are not common, and when they are clearly visible, they can increase the coin's value significantly. There are also high-grade examples of the 1978 penny that can attract attention. Coins that have never been used in circulation and still show sharp detail, strong luster, and minimal marks are graded by professional services. In top mint state grades, especially MS67 or higher, collectors may pay significantly more than face value. While it is still not a rare coin, condition becomes the main factor that creates value. In auction records and collector markets, most standard 1978 no-mint mark pennies sell for very low amounts, often under $1 unless they are in exceptional condition. However, certain error coins from the same year have been known to sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the severity and visibility of the error. For example, a well-defined off-center strike or a strong double die variety can attract serious attention from error coin collectors who specialize in unique mint mistakes. So how can you tell if you have something special or just a regular penny? The first step is to check the date carefully and confirm it is 1978. Then look under the date area for the absence of a mint mark, which is normal for Philadelphia coins. Next, examine the coin under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look closely at the lettering on Liberty and In God We Trust. If you see doubling or distortion, it could be a sign of a mint error. Also check the coin's edges and surface for unusual shapes or strikes that are not centered properly. It is also important to be careful about counterfeits or altered coins. Some people try to create fake rarities by modifying coins, such as removing mint marks from other years or damaging coins to mimic errors. A genuine mint error will usually have consistent characteristics and will not look artificially damaged. The safest way to verify a valuable coin is to compare it with known examples or consult a professional grading service. There are a few interesting facts about the 1978 penny that many people do not know. First, this was part of a massive production period where the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies each year, making them one of the most common coins in circulation. Second, even though the design looks simple, it remained largely unchanged for decades, showing how stable U.S. coin design can be. Third, the Lincoln Memorial reverse design would continue until 2008, meaning the 1978 penny is part of a long visual era in American coin history. Collectors still enjoy the 1978 no-mint mark penny not because it is rare, but because it represents a piece of everyday history. It is a reminder of a time when coins passed through countless hands in daily life, long before digital payments became common. For many collectors, coins like this are not about high value, but about connection to the past and the stories ordinary objects can carry. Today, most coin experts agree that the 1978 Lincoln penny remains a highly accessible coin for beginners. It is easy to find, inexpensive to study, and perfect for learning how to identify mint marks, conditions, and errors. Many collectors actually start their journey with coins just like this one before moving on to rarer and more valuable pieces. As you look at a 1978 no-mint mark penny, you are not just holding a small piece of copper. You are holding a snapshot of American life in the late 1970s, a time when small change still mattered in everyday transactions and when millions of identical coins quietly built the foundation of modern circulation. And the next time you find one in your pocket or in an old jar, you might pause for just a moment longer. Because even the most ordinary-looking penny can sometimes lead you into a much bigger story than you ever expected. Imagine holding a tiny copper coin in your hand that most people would never look at twice. Now imagine that same coin suddenly catching the attention of collectors around the world. Not because it is made of gold, but because of a small detail most people don't even notice. A simple missing mark. Something so small it can be overlooked in seconds, yet powerful enough to spark endless curiosity. That is exactly what happens when people hear about the 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like any other penny from your pocket change. But once you understand what you are looking at, it starts to feel different. It raises questions. Why does it have no mint mark? Is it rare? Could it be worth something more than 1 cent? Or is it just another misunderstood coin that people talk about online? To understand that, we need to go back and look at what this coin actually is and why it exists in the first place. The 1979 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909. This coin features the profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front, one of the most recognizable designs in American coin history. On the back, you will see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 and continued for decades. By 1979, this design was already familiar to millions of Americans who used these coins every single day without thinking twice. This penny was made during a time when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet everyday demand. In 1979 alone, billions of pennies were struck. Most of them came from two main facilities, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. A smaller number of proof coins were produced at the San Francisco Mint for collectors. Now here is where the confusion begins for many people. In 1979, coins from the Philadelphia Mint did not carry a mint mark. That means if you find a 1979 penny with no mint mark, it almost certainly came from Philadelphia. This was completely normal at the time. It was not an error, and it was not something unusual. It was just how the system worked before the U.S. Mint changed its policy in the early 1980s. So why do people still talk about it as if it is rare? The answer is simple. Modern collectors are used to seeing mint marks on most coins, especially pennies from later years. When they see a coin without one, it creates the impression that something is missing or unusual. That curiosity leads to the idea that it might be valuable. But in the case of the 1979 Lincoln penny, the lack of a mint mark alone does not make it rare. What truly matters is the condition of the coin and whether it has any unusual errors or special characteristics. The 1979 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and a small amount of zinc and tin. This was before the major change in 1982, when pennies began to be made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating. Because of its higher copper content, a 1979 penny actually has a bit more intrinsic metal value than modern pennies, but still not enough to make it valuable in everyday terms. Most circulated 1979 pennies you find today are worth exactly 1 cent. Even uncirculated ones, unless they are in extremely high grades, are usually only worth a small premium. But there are special cases where value can increase significantly. Collectors look for errors and rare conditions. For example, a 1979 penny that was struck off-center, where the design appears shifted, can sometimes sell for anywhere from a few dollars to over $50 depending on how dramatic the error is. Another example is a double die error, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a mistake in the die used to strike the coin. If strong enough, this type of error can attract serious collector interest. There are also coins known as broad strikes, where the penny is struck without its normal collar, causing it to appear wider and thinner than usual. These can also carry higher value depending on condition. And in some rare cases, coins that were struck on the wrong type of metal planchet can be worth even more, sometimes reaching into the hundreds of dollars if verified by professional grading services. However, it is important to understand that these are exceptions, not the rule. When it comes to regular 1979 no-mint mark pennies, the market value is still extremely low. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples sell for less than $1 or a few dollars at most. Only coins that are professionally graded at very high mint states, such as MS-67 or MS-68, might reach higher collector prices, and even then, the prices are usually modest compared to truly rare U.S. coins. At auctions, a typical high-grade 1979 Philadelphia penny might sell for anywhere from $1 to $10. Exceptional specimens with flawless surfaces and strong eye appeal might reach slightly higher, but they are still considered common coins in the numismatic world. The real excitement comes from errors, not the standard coin itself. Now, if you are trying to identify a real 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, the process is straightforward. First, look at the front of the coin just below the date. If there is no letter present, such as a D or S, then it is a Philadelphia issue. That is normal for this year. Next, check the condition. Look closely for unusual features like doubling in the letters, misaligned strikes, or unusual shapes. These are the features that can potentially increase value. Be careful with misinformation. Some sellers or videos may claim that all no-mint mark pennies are rare or valuable, but that is not true for this year. The absence of a mint mark in 1979 is expected, not an error. The real value always depends on condition and rarity of specific mistakes. There are also a few interesting facts about this coin that make it more fascinating. For example, 1979 was part of a period when the U.S. Mint was producing coins at extremely high volume due to rising demand in everyday commerce. This means billions of pennies from this year still exist today, many of them sitting in jars, drawers, or old collections. That huge supply is one of the main reasons the coin is not rare. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the back includes a tiny version of Lincoln statue inside the building. Many people never notice this detail, even though it has been on the coin for decades. It adds a hidden layer of artistry to something that most people consider ordinary. Collectors are still drawn to the 1979 Lincoln penny not because it is rare in itself, but because it represents a time when American coinage was transitioning. It was one of the last decades before major changes in metal composition and minting practices. For many collectors, it serves as a gateway coin, something simple and affordable that introduces them to the world of numismatics. It is also a reminder that not every valuable coin looks special at first glance. Sometimes, value is hidden in the smallest details, like a minting mistake or an unusual variation that most people would overlook. That sense of discovery is what keeps collectors searching through rolls of pennies even today. In the end, the 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is not a hidden treasure in the way many people hope it might be. But it is still an important piece of American coin history. It represents everyday life, massive production, and the quiet evolution of the U.S. Mint. And in rare cases, when something unusual happens during its creation, it can become something far more interesting than just 1 cent. So the next time you find a 1979 penny in your change, take a closer look. You might not find a fortune, but you could find a small piece of history that has traveled through decades of hands, unnoticed and unchanged, waiting for someone to finally pay attention. And that leads to an interesting question. If something as ordinary as a penny can hold hidden details that most people miss, what else in your pocket might be worth a second look? In your pocket right now, there could be a coin that most people ignore without a second thought, but under the right conditions, it can become something collectors quietly search for every single day. It is small, copper-colored, and easy to overlook. Yet the story behind the 1985 VDB Lincoln penny is tied to modern minting history, subtle variations, and the surprising world of error coins that can turn ordinary change into something far more interesting than its 1 cent face value. The coin we are talking about is the 1985 VDB Lincoln Memorial penny, struck at the Denver Mint in the United States. At first glance, it looks like any other modern penny from the 1980s. It has Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But what makes it worth talking about is not what you see immediately. It is what you might miss and what collectors have learned to look for over time. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the mid-1980s. In 1985, the United States was producing billions of pennies each year. The economy was growing, vending machines were everywhere, and cash transactions still ruled everyday life. The U.S. Mint had one job when it came to the penny: produce massive quantities quickly and consistently. The Denver Mint, marked by a small d under the date, was one of the main facilities responsible for this production. By 1985, the Lincoln penny design had already been in use for more than 70 years. The front still honored Abraham Lincoln, one of the most respected presidents in American history, and the back featured the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. But even though the design was familiar, the way these coins were made had changed significantly over time. One of the most important changes happened just a few years earlier in 1982. That year, the U.S. Mint switched the penny's composition from mostly copper to a mostly zinc core with a thin copper coating. This means the 1985 VDB penny is not solid copper like older pennies. It has a zinc core that is covered with a very thin layer of copper. This change made production cheaper, but it also introduced new types of problems that collectors pay attention to today, such as plating issues, bubbles, and uneven surfaces. The 1985 VDB penny itself was not created to be rare. In fact, it was made in enormous numbers, with billions released into circulation. Most of them still exist today in change jars, drawers, and cash registers. That is why, in normal condition, a 1985 VDB penny is only worth 1 cent. But in the world of coin collecting, value is not always about how many were made. It is about condition, mistakes, and survival. When collectors study the 1985 VDB penny, they look closely at three main things. The first is condition. A coin that has never been used in circulation, known as mint state, can be significantly more interesting than a worn one. The second is color. Pennies are graded by their copper color tone, often described as red, red-brown, or brown. A bright red penny that has never dulled over time is much harder to find in perfect condition. The third, and most exciting, is errors. Error coins are where things become truly interesting. During the minting process, billions of coins pass through high-speed machinery. Even with strict quality control, mistakes happen. For the 1985 VDB penny, some of these mistakes include off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned, and double die varieties, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment in the die during production. There are also coins with weak strikes, where the details appear softer than normal, and plating issues, where the copper layer did not bond smoothly to the zinc core. While most of these errors are not extremely common for this specific year, they do exist, and when they are found in strong condition, collectors become interested. Now the question many people ask is simple. Is the 1985 VDB penny rare or valuable? The honest answer is that in normal condition, it is not rare. But in high grades or with unusual errors, it can gain attention in the collector market. For example, a regular circulated 1985 VDB penny, the kind you might find in pocket change, is still worth just 1 cent. Even uncirculated examples in average condition might only sell for a few cents to a couple of dollars. However, when you reach higher mint state grades, especially coins that have been carefully preserved without scratches or discoloration, values can increase significantly. Some high-grade 1985 D pennies graded by professional services have sold for tens of dollars, and in rare cases, those in exceptional condition with near-perfect surfaces have reached higher prices at auction. The real jumps in value usually come when an error is involved. An off-center 1985 D penny with strong visual displacement can sometimes sell for $50, $100, or more depending on how dramatic the error is and how well the coin has been preserved. Similarly, unusual minting anomalies or highly lustrous red specimens in top grade can also attract strong collector bids. But it is important to understand something clearly. Not every 1985 D penny is valuable, and many online claims exaggerate their worth. The true value depends on verified grading, real demand, and genuine rarity. So how can someone tell if they have a real 1985 D penny worth paying attention to? The first step is simple. Check the date and mint mark. You want to see 1985 and a small d under the date on the front of the coin. That confirms it was minted in Denver. Next, look at the condition. If the coin still has sharp details, minimal scratches, and a bright red copper shine, it may be worth closer inspection. Then examine the surfaces carefully. Look for anything unusual. Doubling in the letters, especially in Liberty or In God We Trust, could indicate a possible variety. Check the edges and alignment of the design. If part of the image looks shifted or incomplete, it may be an off-center strike. Also look for bubbles, peeling, or unusual texture on the surface, which can happen with copper-plated zinc coins when the plating process is imperfect. A common mistake people make is confusing damage with errors. A scratched penny, a stained penny, or a worn coin is not an error coin. Real mint errors happen during production, not after circulation. That difference is extremely important in determining value. There are also some interesting facts about the 1985 penny that many people do not realize. For example, even though billions were made, finding one in perfect uncirculated red condition today is much harder than people expect. That is because most of these coins entered circulation immediately and were handled heavily over decades. Another interesting detail is that zinc core pennies like the 1985 D are more prone to long-term deterioration if exposed to moisture, which means surviving examples in pristine condition become harder to find over time. Collectors are drawn to the 1985 D penny not because it is the rarest coin in American history, but because it represents something different. It represents the modern era of coin production, where machines took over almost every step, yet small imperfections still slipped through. For collectors, those imperfections tell a story of how even mass-produced coins can carry unique characteristics. There is also a psychological side to its appeal. Many collectors enjoy searching through large amounts of common pennies hoping to find something unusual. The 1985 D penny is part of that experience. It is accessible. It is everywhere. And that means the possibility of discovery always exists, even if the odds are small. In today's market, most collectors do not chase the 1985 D penny specifically as a key date coin. Instead, they look for it as part of broader Lincoln Cent collections or as a potential error discovery. Its value lies more in condition rarity and mint mistakes than in its mintage number. As time goes on, well-preserved examples may slowly become more appreciated, especially in top grades. Coins that were once considered ordinary often gain attention decades later simply because fewer high-quality survivors remain. So the next time you come across a 1985 D penny, it might be tempting to dismiss it as just another coin from pocket change. But if you take a closer look, you are holding a small piece of modern minting history. It is a reminder that even the most common objects can hide details worth noticing. And sometimes, the difference between 1 cent and something far more interesting is just a matter of observation. And that raises an interesting question. If a simple penny from 1985 can still surprise collectors today, what else might be hiding in plain sight inside everyday change? Waiting for someone to notice it first? Most people handle pennies every day without ever looking twice at them. But what if one of the most ordinary coins in your pocket carried a hidden detail that collectors quietly search for every single day? a detail so small that most people completely miss it. Yet in rare cases it can turn a simple 1-cent coin into something worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In the year 2000, millions of Lincoln pennies were released into circulation across the United States. At first glance, they look completely normal. Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, and no mint mark below the date. That missing mint mark often confuses people. Some even believe it means the coin is rare or special. But the truth is more interesting, and it has everything to do with how U.S. pennies are made. The 2000 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is actually the standard coin produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For decades, Philadelphia pennies did not carry a mint mark at all. So if you find a 2000 penny with no mint mark, you are not holding a mistake or a rare error. You are holding one of the most common coins of that year. But before you lose interest, there is an important twist that keeps collectors paying attention. Because while the normal version is extremely common, certain rare varieties and minting errors from the year 2000 have created real excitement in the coin collecting world. And sometimes those small differences are hiding in plain sight inside everyday pocket change. To understand why, we need to go back to what this coin actually is. The 2000 Lincoln penny is part of a long-running series that began in 1909. It was originally created to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The design was made by Victor David Brenner, and it became one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. By the year 2000, the penny still carried the same basic Lincoln Memorial design that had been used since 1959. The front of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln's portrait with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 2000. The back shows the Lincoln Memorial, and if you look very closely, you can even see the tiny image of Lincoln statue inside the building. That level of detail is one of the reasons collectors admire this coin, even when it is extremely common. The coin is made primarily of copper-plated zinc. In 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the penny's composition from mostly copper to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. By the year 2000, all Lincoln pennies were being made this way. This change reduced production costs, but it also made the coins more prone to certain types of errors, especially during the minting process. Now here is where things get interesting. When people hear no mint mark, they often think it means rarity. But for the 2000 Lincoln penny, no mint mark simply indicates it was made in Philadelphia. The Denver Mint used a small D mint mark, and San Francisco coins usually carried an S and were often proof coins for collectors. Philadelphia coins, especially in 2000, were released without any mint mark at all. So in normal conditions, a 2000 no mint mark penny is not rare. In fact, billions were made. However, collectors don't just look at the date. They look for small variations, minting mistakes, and specific design differences that can dramatically change a coin's value. One of the most famous and valuable varieties from this year is known as the wide AM reverse. On most 2000 pennies, the letters A and M in the word America on the back of the coin are very close together. But on the rare wide AM variety, those letters are clearly separated. This happened because the mint accidentally used a proof-style reverse design on some circulation coins. This small difference is extremely important. A normal 2000 penny might be worth just 1 cent, but a verified 2000 wide AM penny in good condition has sold for hundreds of dollars, and in some cases even more depending on grade and demand. Collectors actively search through rolls of pennies hoping to find this exact variety. Another area that makes the 2000 penny interesting is minting errors. These are coins that were accidentally struck in unusual ways during production. For example, some coins may show a double die effect, where the letters or numbers appear slightly doubled. Others may be struck off-center, meaning the design is shifted and part of the coin looks blank. There are also struck-through errors, where small pieces of debris or grease interfere with the strike, leaving unusual marks or missing details on the surface of the coin. While most of these errors do not make a coin extremely valuable, certain clear and dramatic examples can attract strong interest from collectors. In general, a regular 2000 Lincoln penny with no mint mark in circulated condition is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, it might only be worth a few cents. But once you enter the world of varieties and errors, the story changes completely. Auction results and collector sales show this clearly. Common examples sell for pennies, but verified wide AM varieties and strong error coins have been known to sell anywhere from tens of dollars into the low hundreds, depending on condition and authenticity. High-grade certified examples always bring stronger prices because collectors trust professionally graded coins more than raw finds. So how can you tell if your 2000 penny is something special or just a normal coin? The first step is to check the mint mark area below the date. If there is no letter, it simply means Philadelphia production, not an error. Next, carefully examine the back of the coin, especially the word America. If the A and M in America are touching or extremely close, it is the normal version. If they are clearly separated, you might have the rare wide AM variety, which is worth a closer look. Then check the overall surface of the coin. Look for doubling in the letters, unusual spacing, off-center strikes, or strange marks that do not look like normal wear. A simple magnifying glass or smartphone zoom can help reveal details that are not visible at first glance. It is also important to be cautious, because the popularity of rare penny hunting has led to many altered or misleading coins being sold online. Some people try to artificially modify coins to make them look like rare varieties. Genuine errors come from the minting process itself, not from post-mint changes. That is why professional grading services are often used to confirm authenticity. There is also a fun side to this coin that many people don't realize. The Lincoln penny, including the year 2000 version, is one of the most studied coins in American numismatics. Entire communities exist where collectors share their finds, compare tiny design differences, and search rolls of pennies from banks hoping to discover something valuable hiding inside. And despite being so common, the penny still survives in circulation today, making it one of the last direct connections to everyday coin collecting in modern life. Even in the year 2000, long before digital payments took over, this coin was passing through millions of hands every single day, unnoticed but always present. That is part of its mystery. A coin that seems so ordinary can still hold hidden surprises if you know what to look for. And that keeps collectors interested, even decades later. Today, collectors continue to search through 2000 Lincoln pennies, not because most of them are valuable, but because a few rare ones are still waiting to be discovered. Every coin roll has the potential to contain a small mistake from the mint, a subtle design variation, or a unique strike that turns a 1-cent piece into something far more interesting. In the end, the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a reminder that value is not always obvious at first glance. Most of these coins will always remain common, but a few special examples tell a different story, one shaped by tiny details, production quirks, and the careful eyes of collectors. So the next time you come across a 2000 penny, take a closer look before you set it aside. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest detail can change everything, and sometimes the most ordinary coin might just be hiding an unexpected story worth discovering.